Hey guys, today I'm going to be doing a review of the Staedtler 12 watercolor paints. I wanted to see if I could actually see a difference between professional grade and student grade. As well, I've never seen any reviews of these Staedtler watercolor paints, and I thought that there might be other people out there who are using these and wanted a review of the paints. As you can see, this is what I used to use for my palette. You can tell it's a little bit stained. I use an egg dish now, but this is what I started with. This is something that you can just pick up at your local craft store. I think this is from Michael's in Canada. I maybe spent $1 on it. When you're first starting to watercolor, you might not want to spend that much just seeing if you like watercolor. And I think that a lot of people start with this kind of palette, a plastic palette, and maybe even some people might stick with that, and they start with student grade paint. And I'm just gonna squeeze out the tubes. I think that I spent about $12 on these paints, and it comes in 12 milliliter tubes, so it's a very affordable paint, especially for beginners. I don't know how well you can tell, but in the wells, the paints don't stick very well to the wells of the palette, and they kind of crack. I tried experimenting by putting honey in the paints, and it made a bit of a difference in the consistency of the paint, especially when it dried. But that's one thing that I've noticed with the professional watercolors, is that even when it dries, the paint doesn't really crack or separate as much as opposed to when I use these watercolor paints. I'm using a fair bit of paint because I've realized that one of the things that I would do before is I would use a lot of water because I was trying to conserve my paint. But I've realized that you don't really need to do that, because then you just have to use more paint to get the richness of color that you want. And so now I'm just gonna I try using less water when I'm painting. So as you can see, I have filled up my palettes with paint, and I didn't put white in because I don't use white. And I'm just gonna start by painting my typical items, which are 1 watermelon and 1 flamingo, because I like to do that. I won't lie, that's my favorite thing to draw. Right off the top, I can kind of see a little bit more filler in the paint itself, like it's not mixing as well with the water as the professional grade watercolor, although the color itself is still looking pretty vibrant. And I know that there's fillers because when it dries, it separates a lot. The other thing that I'm noticing as I'm painting my watermelon is that the colors don't seem to mix that well, even within itself. Like, look how fast that the paint kind of settles in the page, and then there's this really harsh line. And basically, if I rework this at all, I'm gonna get streaks in my paper, and I don't like that. I didn't notice that when I first started, but I'm really noticing that now. I don't think I can go back to these paints. I might just have to get rid of them or use them for throwaway stuff where I'm just practicing, not even technique really, just seeing, maybe drawing something out and seeing if I like the shapes of it, instead of using like really good paint for something like that. I didn't leave my typical white space between the green and the pink because I kind of wanted to see what the flow would be, but there's basically no flow. And it could be that I used to get more flow back in the day when I used to use a lot more water, but because now I'm using less water with my paint, I'm really noticing the lack of flow between the colors. The thing is that I just love the colors. They're so vibrant. So I wish that they were better quality because the colors themselves are really nice. I mean, it looks cool because watermelons look cool to begin with, but it's not really behaving like I want it to behave. Let me try doing a flamingo because I use a bit more colors, and seeing if I can tell something is going on over there. Even here, I'm noticing when I'm putting the 2 wet colors together, the yellow is basically just sitting on top of the red. It's not really blending with the red. And that's something that the Daniel Smith watercolors are very good at doing, that the colors mix together as I'm painting as opposed to sitting on top of each other. Yeah, I'm really not noticing a lot of flow with this watercolor. Even here I can see chunks of the yellow paint just sitting on the paper. It's not really dissolving that well, not mixing that well. So I think what I can say so far is that these do not interact in the way that you want watercolors to interact with the paper and the water and the brushes, versus how the Daniel Smith or the more professional grade watercolors act. This is the first time that I think I've painted out a completed flamingo for you guys. This is really not that good of a flamingo, but I think that I can make it better by giving him an afro. While I'm waiting for that to dry, I'm just going to play with some of these other colors that I haven't really used yet and see what kind of opinions I have about them. And I'm just going to do some swatches with the rest of the colors and see what I think about them. So I'll just do them in order. And again, I'm just adding water. There's not really a range. It's kind of like dark. And here's like when I add just straight water, it doesn't really flow, and it doesn't really get particularly lighter in a gradual way. For those of you that know me, or even those that don't know me are starting to learn, that I have very big hair. It gets in my way when I'm painting and I'm trying to film because, you know, I kind of want to look at what I'm doing and I want to be really close and my hair gets in the frame. So that's just something that you're gonna have to accept happens, because that's just who I am. I just have really big hair. So now that I've done the color swatches and I've experimented a little bit with drawing some stuff using my student grade paints, I am noticing that you have a lot less ability to control what's happening with the paint on the paper. So you don't really have as much control over the value. You don't really get much flow. The paint just kind of sits on the page. So what I would say is the Staedtler watercolor paints, it's really good because it gives you a chance to explore watercolors at a very reasonable entry-level price. But if you really want to master some of the techniques that even me, as someone who's only been doing it for a few months, I can notice a big difference in doing the same techniques with the Staedtler paints versus the professional grade Daniel Smith paints. Once you have the ability, or you've decided that you do like it, I would invest in getting higher quality paint, because you can do a lot more technique-wise, which will improve the overall quality of your paintings. So that's my review of the Staedtler watercolor paints. I would say that they're a really good set for beginners, but once you want to start really working on your technique, I would say that you should probably invest in a professional grade watercolor. Here is one of my very first watermelons. I can see my brush marks a lot in this, and I think that's probably has to do with the fact that when you touch it again with your brush the second time, it really leaves these brush marks. Here's a color swatch that I did with my 12 paints, which is a wide range, which is good. You can get a wide range of colors. It's just that the colors themselves don't behave necessarily how you might want them to. Another watermelon here. Here's a flamingo with a little bit of a different technique. Oh, here. Look at that. Those are some flamingos that I did. This is my watercolor posse, the gang. Whatever gang is the blue gang, I don't know. If you guys liked the video, please hit the subscribe button and give the video a thumbs up, and leave any comments about any other kind of watercolor videos that you think that you'd like to see. And I hope to talk to you again soon. Bye.